Well, happy holidays, guys. Hope you're staying warm and Santa brought you the watch that you wished for. Snowed quite a bit here this past week, and it doesn't snow in Seattle very often, so it kind of looks like this. But anyway, this week we're talking about IWC, and really for the first time on this channel. Yeah, it's taken me a while to warm up to IWC, but hey, this watch, I think it's a keeper. Hey guys, I'm Max and this is Watch Crunch. WatchCrunch.com is an online discussion platform that we just launched for watch nerds like you and me to have a more positive place to talk watches. More about that at the end of the video. So I have to admit, IWC is a brand that I've been curious about for a long time. Thank you, John Mayer, but have not really taken the time to understand fully. I mean, I love military watches, and I've owned everything from a Zinn to Hamiltons, from Stowa to Laco, but I've always found myself moving on from them because, for better or worse, their designs are very simple and straightforward. And once I got over that honeymoon period and stopped reflecting on the military history, there was just not much left to keep me interested. So as a last-ditch effort, I'm moving upmarket to give IWC, the king of pilot watches, a try. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why this Spitfire just became my perfect gateway drug into IWC. Now, from afar, this might look like any other military heritage watch, and it's hard to see what all the fuss is about. I mean, the basic recipe is pretty simple. A matte dial, clear Arabic numerals, sans serif, inside of a stainless steel case. But just like scrambled eggs made by Gordon Ramsay, surely you're better than this! Sometimes the simplest things are the hardest to make well. And the magic here is in the details. IWC has been able to tweak this simple recipe to create something not just utilitarian, but also crafted and worthy of its luxury price. This design will never blow anyone away right out of the box, but the operative word here is balance. This watch face is a masterclass of how to distribute elements on a dial. First, there is a deep symmetry, no matter which axis you cut it. There is the same number of elements on the left and right side of the dial. There's also two lines of text, both above and below the center. But symmetry doesn't necessarily mean mirror copies. Things are kept interesting in the vertical plane by the red Spitfire lettering, and in the horizontal, it's interrupted by an inconspicuous date window at 3. Now, some think a black date wheel would have looked better here, but I think then you run the risk of leaving a black hole on that part of the dial. This little white box is small enough that at a glance, your eyes just sort of blend it into the rest of the circle of Arabics. Now, staying on the topic of spacing for a second, these numerals are pushed closer to the center of the dial by the minute track, and this in combination with the broad sword hands, which are wider near their base, help to take up the slack in that empty space in the middle section of the dial that most A-type Fliegers struggle with so much. The dial is adorned with details without feeling too busy. And to me, a well-designed watch looks good even when the hands are not at 10 and 2, and this is a good example of that. The attention to detail is carried onto the case. A thin chamfer is cut into the lugs that run the entire length of the mid-case, and if you look closely, even this thin bezel gets 4 alternating finishes of brush and polish. On the solid case back, we get an engraving of the light and nimble Spitfire, an iconic British fighter of World War II that dueled against German Messerschmitts and chased down bombers over London. Behind it, the movement is shielded by a soft iron plate. Now, in a world of silicon hairsprings, this is more of a historical callback than anything else, but achieves anti-magnetism the old-fashioned way. The movement is IWC's new in-house caliber 32110, a 21 joule automatic beating at 28.8 with 72 hours of juice. This is fantastic, as I think in this day and age, when even Tissot can get 80 hours out of an ETA, luxury manufacturers really ought to shoot for at least 3 days of power. When you own more than a handful of watches, it's always a delight to pick one up and see that you don't have to reset the time before putting it on. Now guys, please head down there and give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing so we can all get through quarantine together with these fantastic watches. IWC is one of the dirty dozen, 12 watch companies commissioned to supply watches for the British military during World War II. These watches were known as WWW, which stood for Watch, Wrist, Waterproof. How military is that? IWC's famous big pilots were originally made with pocket watch movements, were 46 millimeters, I think, and designed to be worn outside of flight jackets with a conical onion crown that could be operated with gloves on. With the Spitfire, these oversized elements have been distilled down to a more civilian size. On the wrist, you still get that earnest military feel, but in a highly refined package. The triangle at 12, for example, quickly oriented pilots to the top of the watch. A screw-down crown offers a modest 60 meters of water resistance, and there is sparing use of faux patina, which adds a bit of color to the dial. Now, why only use color lume at the 3, 6, and 9, you might ask? Well, this wasn't just a spurious design decision. It is actually to match the placement of the radium lume plots of the iconic original Mark 11, created for the RAF in 1948. Now, in this watch, I've paired it with a khaki canvas strap from Strapcode. The rugged fabric picks up on the color of the lume, and the deployant buckle classes it up just a notch. So a reason I've always written off IWC is because with a 6.5-inch wrist, I just couldn't pull off their big pilot watches. Not to worry here with the perfect case diameter of 39 millimeters. Though the lugs are long, putting the case length at 50 millimeters, the thinness of the case allows it to sit flat and leaves enough room underneath if you want to throw it on a leather NATO. On the wrist, the watch is a darling. Now, the thing about classic timeless design is that it doesn't shout at you, but has sort of a slow release charm that reveals itself over time. I'm happy to report that I'm safely past the honeymoon period at this point. I'm still noticing small details that make me smile, like the blue glare the AR coating gives off at certain angles, or the slight bend at the tip of the minute and second hands as they reach out toward the edge of the dial while ducking underneath the dome sapphire crystal. Now, there are a few variants to the Spitfire line, including a chronograph and a bronze version, but I personally like the simplicity of this three-hander. It's been a couple years since this watch was released, so you might even find one pre-owned like this one I have at a good discount. As you can see, this one's already gotten some wear, and I can't wait to beat it up some more. Guys, what's your favorite military watch? Let's continue this conversation on watchcrunch.com. We developed WatchCrunch because we were turned off by the negativity we saw on traditional forums, but also wanted something a bit more substantial than Instagram. So we created a multimedia discussion platform that combines the best of both worlds. And I'm happy to report that just in the last month, over 1,000 of you have joined, and I've seen some really interesting topics pop up in the last couple of weeks. I'll put a link to a thread on this watch in the pinned comments below. As always, take care, guys, and happy 2022.